Welcome to Sidebar, a book club and support group for white dudes rejected from the mainstream publishing industry. I'm David.
I'm Haji Gabriel of the Jackalopian chapter.
And I'm Capitalissimo, and I am a Wolpertingerist infiltrator.
Subversive.
And we're here to discuss The Jackalopians by Mark Marlow. That intro shout out, Isaac Simpson, and true fan of the show, T.R. Hudson, true brother of the show. Thanks for the shout out. It was the week of shout outs last week. I think we had perhaps our record number of shout outs performed and shout outs received.
True.
Yeah.
We're E-celebs, baby.
That's not true. Yeah. You're an E-celeb when you break 1,000 views per episode on average.
Well, listen, we're the E-celebs E-celeb. You know, like the author's author. Like, he's not popular, but all the authors like him. We're the E-celebs E-celeb.
Right. Yeah, that's right. We're so lonely we've developed a parasocial relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
With the idea of ourselves.
Yeah, it's the idealized form of the podcaster. We've achieved it, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, no, that's not true. We also have Mark Dawson fans. You know, we got them in the comments now.
Yeah, we got the Dawson heads. We got the Hudson heads. We got all sorts of heads. We got big major head game going on here. Yeah, and today we're here to discuss The Jackalopians by Mark Marlow. And as is usually our process, we're going to start with generalities, spoiler free for a couple minutes. We'll give a little warning before we dive into the story proper. And then once we cross that line, we're going to do more of a structured walkthrough. And the way we've broken this out, which I think, Cap, you're going to dive into the initial impressions in just a moment. But, I think we're going to walk through the three phases of character one, and then sort of the two characters narrating the story at us for the second two parts, which I think kind of captures maybe some of our concerns with the structure of it. Without diving too much, spoiling too much, Cap, do you want to give a summary of like what the heck is the Jackalopians? What's going on here?
The Jackalopians is properly the story of a group of young white male professionals who are generally right-leaning and basically just want something to believe in. And the thing that they choose to believe in is an elaborate LARP where they form a secret initiatic order called the Jackalopians, which serves and honors the mythical jackalope, a jackrabbit with the horns of some sort of cervid animal. It could be an antelope. It could be a white-tailed deer. It could be a pronghorn. There are many
Will it
kinds
have wings?
of jackalope.
I don't know.
Yes,
that's a major plot point.
So these guys, the story, to the degree that the Jackalopians are present, there's, you see a regular meeting of them, you see the genesis of the idea of the Jackalopians, and you sort of see you see some internal struggles and the apotheosis. But the Jackalopians are more of a binding idea than like strictly the drama of the organization. I would say is not the story here.
Yeah. I have a pet theory I want to unleash later that we are all Jackalopians. I'll put a pin in that, but just to plant the seed. And one thematic, or not thematic, one part of the scene to just really highlight is that the setting of the book is 2020, or is it? No, it's 20. There's some in like 2019, late 2019.
It starts, yeah.
2021.
It's
mid-COVID. It's mid-COVID.
Yeah. So the book is actually occurring in 2021, but includes flashbacks and retellings of events that occurred at various points in the prior 20-ish years. So, but most of the action happens with the backdrop of pandemic and the pandemic restrictions.
Yeah.
So,
Probably the closest thing we've had to a COVID book so far.
I think it would be fair to say that this is a book very, very steeped in the current political climate.
It's COVID contemporary. It's COVID chic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess before we dive in, without getting into spoilers or diving into too much detail on anything on it, Gabe, I don't know if you had anything.
Like I'll agree with Cap. Basically, it's basically it's mostly commentary. It's very much It's mostly commentary on like the COVID era, Trump, the libs, what I call right wing SNL, and then secondary is actually the characters of these sensitive young white men trying to deal with all the chaos and evil around them, basically.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I shouldn't have led with that they're white. They are, but it's not like
well. There's one like
it
Nick
matters
Fuentes.
Eventually, but it's not like
Yeah. There's one Nick Fuentes exception amongst the group.
In every good friend group, there is. I said the one Irishman surrounded by meds.
Listen, I'm a Southern goth. All right, thank you very much.
I would guess I would say maybe proceed with caution because I think we're going to dive into spoilers now. From our very brief conversation we had before we started recording, we all had some pretty significant concerns with the structure of the book, and we thought it had some issues there. But I really don't want to dive into spoilers yet, so I don't know. What do you guys think? Should we just dive right in, or do you want to discuss structure first?
Let's just go for it.
Yeah, because the structure's tied in with the narrative.
It's going to come in hard, like on section 2 in particular. So I think that's fair. The
structure happens. No offense, but I think the structure happens immediately. Like the first 6 chapters are an absolute mess. There's a hard shift. I don't know if you want to go deep into it already.
Yeah, dive in. Go into it.
So our main character is a guy named, I think, Dan Smith.
Yes.
And our main character in theory, but not in practice or nor platonically.
The perspective character.
The documentarian, basically, character. Yeah. He works as a lawyer in a group in North Virginia, in the Washington, D.C. area. And he's a Trump supporter. The opening scenes are in 2019, right before COVID. And, he's surrounded by libs. He's working with people, working with majority libs. And he's sharing his screen, and it's office life. It's very much like Jack from Fight Club, right? And so he has a little pop-up email while he's sharing the screen at work. And, of course, it's a, real true MAGA patriots. Thank you for your $100 donation. Right, so it's revealed that he's a Trumper.
I still get those texts. Thank you, Trump.
you betrayed. Now it's very harsh. It's like you abandoned Donald Trump.
David, this is Don Jr. I need your help. I'm in prison, right? I'm in Guantanamo Bay right now.
Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president?
Oh God, he should fucking do those memes. That'd be hilarious.
That would work.
But so the first chapter ends with a hard cliffhanger. Actually, the hard cliffhanger is his coworkers know he's a Trump supporter. So it's a hard, actually, oh my God, what will happen? He's going to get canceled? Is he going to be socially isolated? And then all of these events are shoved into the next, 3 chapters. It's revealed that he has a girlfriend named Katie. And Katie is like an empty-headed slut, but in a very, puppy dog way. Mm-hmm. They'll make out and have sex in, the Blossom Park in Washington, D.C., because they have Japanese blossoms in Washington, D.C. They'll make out in a Holocaust museum. Then he wants to go to a Greek restaurant, but she's like, oh...
What if we kissed in the Holocaust Memorial?
The Fault in Our Stars. It's okay when the libs do it. But, they start to have sex, and they're very horny. Basically, it's just revealed their relationship is 90% sex. But then she's basically very sensitive. She's a typical female, so she's very meme sensitive. She's very sensitive to the cultural memes. So she then, in the next 2 chapters, you get COVID shoved in immediately. COVID, BLM, the inauguration riots, like everything gets shoved in immediately, and then you completely forget about the memo. About the email thing.
So there's no he does not experience any fallout for the reveal that he is a Trump supporter. What does occur is that another a colleague on the call, James LaRoe, also later referred to as Haji LaRoe, discovers that maybe our boy Dan is based. So, when the pandemic starts, Dan is not hard right.
No,
right?
no, he's a tourist.
So
he's a fucking tourist. Is what he is.
Well,
he seems like he reads the stuff, but he's not lifestyle into it.
Yeah. So in the and this is how. So like when the pandemic starts and Dan is alarmed and does not and is trying to figure out the degree to which this shit is real. Katie comes over and
he fails the shit test.
And she's been exposed to COVID, and he's like, "Oh, well, don't come within 6 feet of me." And she's like, "I don't understand." And
Katie was right the whole book. Fuck.
And so he's like, "Well, don't worry about it. Just go isolate at your house, and it'll be over in 2 weeks, and we'll see each other again." And because he did not immediately satisfy her physical needs, she basically
he gets COVID cucked.
He gets COVID cucked. He gets super fucking cucked. He could have shacked up. And roasted the roasty for the entire pandy. But
it's
instead,
believable though, because if you remember that era, and everyone always forgets this at the time, and the book points this out accurately. Right wingers were hyper paranoid, and left wingers were like, "Oh, it's not a big deal."
Yeah.
And so her being "Oh, I'll just stay here," we'll snuggle up, and him being freaked out, it's totally accurate. Because I remember that was still the hug a Asian phase of pandemic.
They mentioned the phrase.
They mentioned the hug an Asian. They mentioned the whole Trump wanted to restrict travel from China before there were any infections in the United States, and how he got pushed back that it was racist, and he was absolutely fucking right.
Yes.
So much could have been avoided.
Many such cases.
But instead we decided to have. Well, I don't need to recite the litany of bad administrative choices that the managerial class put us all through. But eventually, or after maybe a month or so of this going on with Katie, she basically, they're barely talking anymore. And when the George Floyd thing happens, he's like, "Hey, why don't we start seeing each other again? People are going out in the streets for all this stuff, so why don't we just go see each other?" Katie makes up a bunch of hoo-ha about Dan being a racist because he doesn't want to because he wants to see her instead of going out in the street and protesting, and breaks up with him. And then he shortly thereafter finds out that she'd been fucking cheating on him with some guy in her building for more than a month.
Well, it's 2 months
already.
It's 2 months actually.
Yeah, quite a while. And she'd basically just been stringing him along. So Katie's a dirty slut.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of deserved it, to be honest. Let's be honest.
Well, yeah, he was definitely thinking with his dick. Yeah.
No, the opposite of thinking with his dick. Because
What do you mean?
No, because think about it. So he has his relationship. This is, by the way, my personal like opinions aside about how I critique art. Dan is easily in like our worst protagonists we've ever covered. I distinctly dislike him as a person because
Really?
yes. All right. So because he talks a big game. He mentions like, oh, like I'm based. Like I read these authors, like because he names drops Joseph de Maistre. He name drops James Burnham and Thomas Carlyle. Right?
Right.
He's the white guy version of white girl in a band T-shirt syndrome, where you're morally obligated to ask them, demand of them to name 10 band names. Like I feel like I need to do it to this guy.
Name 3 songs?
Yes, three name songs.
But he's always like perpetually confused and doesn't provide any deeper context or insight.
He acts like a normie conservative a lot of the time. He's like, I didn't know that liberals will say one thing and believe another. I'm like, we have the official James Burnham understander here. Excuse me? He does a literal quote, by the way, when he says, wait, liberals lie? Excuse me? But no, what drives me crazy is like he describes himself during the riots. Oh, I'm a reactionary futurist. I'm like, you fucking poser. He's like, you skimmed a UR blog like once, or watched fucking a video explaining the ideas maybe once. Because like his relationship with the girl, because if you notice, beforehand, before she meets him and reveals that she has COVID, they have sex, right? And she reveals she wants to be choked. Now, this supposed reactionary futurist, apparently, while absorbing all the wisdom of de Maistre and Burnham and Carlyle, apparently does not know anything about sexual mating strategies, or like basic red pill shit from the early 2014s, or even the Heartiste era. So, when a woman says, I want you to strangle me during sex, there's some basic Bayesian priors you need to update. One, you have not been satisfying her recently, and two, you need to overshoot, not undershoot. What does he do? He undershoots the aggressive sex.
What would overshooting mean in this situation?
You kill her. Fucking kill her.
No, no, because he even says, like, oh, I have to hold back. I don't want to damage her skin. But the bitch wants to be railed.
Yeah.
So she basically says, like, oh, it's okay. So he basically doubles down on, like, not satisfying her. And then when the girl comes, she is already infective. And what is the most worst trait for a man can have in front of a woman?
Yeah, fear.
Being risk averse. Yes, risk averse.
Being risk averse, yeah.
Exactly. So this Posian reactionary futurist does not know anything about basic, like, HBD, but women edition. And so he's like, you realize, in order to keep her sexually loyal to you in that situation, you gotta walk across the room and tongue fuck her, basically. You gotta make out with her. You gotta show your dominance.
Yeah.
And he waits 2 months. The guy waits 2 months. He's not a horn dog. He's so risk averse.
He's not
that he
proactive
waits 2
either.
months.
Like later in the book, I won't get too spoilery. Well, it doesn't matter because he's not a character. But later in the book, he just waits to respond to her. He responds to Scott.
He's the perspective.
Yeah.
He is the perspective.
He's an inert perspective character.
Yeah.
But, he has the first chunk of the book is all him. And so, because not only that, who does she shack up with? A fucking no-masker. But he's a no-masker with social approval because he's going out for the riots. Huh? Do you follow me?
Oh, true.
So this guy, he's not wearing a mask. He's going out for George Floyd. He's probably some kind of like libtard, but like with a little bit of edge. And this dude is choking the fuck out of her. Yeah, dirtbag leftist is listening to Come Town and choking this bitch out every night while this guy's listening to Moldbug and just beating off to like Hitler Lives for the 50th interview in a row, just like, oh, tell me more.
No, but he's a poser though, because like when he finally talks to Scott, he's like, "You're not with you." He gets scared. He's like, "You're not with Richard Spencer, are you?" And like. Because, like, the thing is, Marlow, the guy who writes this, the only people who will be reading this are people he already agrees with and people who are in the know. The humor does not work if you're not in the know. Mm-hmm. So, you're reading this. This conversation is happening in 2020. And this motherfucker brings up Richard fucking Spencer, a guy who's not been relevant, aside from nostalgia reasons, for, like, 4 or 5 years at this point.
True.
And he's shook by it, too.
2016, 2017 thing.
That's why I said he's more of a Daily Wire. Like,
but normies know who Richard Spencer is.
Yes, but he was saying he behaves like a normie. This reactionary futurist.
Yeah.
He's like, he gets scared when he talks to Scott about it. He's like, you're not like Nazi. Like that's why I said he's like the male version of the girl wearing the band T-shirt problem.
Yeah.
And he also,
he's a poser.
During the code rise, he also gets his ass beat. I think that's a fact we need to, just mention in passing.
Oh yeah.
The riot scenes are good.
He gets his ass. Well, yeah. I mean, and the caricatures that are in the riot scene are pretty good.
Yeah, it's funny.
Like the aged queen. And
the homosexuals,
and the first appearance of the Antifa squad.
Mm-hmm. My only issue with that scene was the character motivation. It's just like, I was curious, so I wandered outside into this Antifa mob.
Yeah, he had to be there to provide perspective because his role is to be a perspective character.
Yeah, as the cameraman, I'm heading outside, guys. Wish me
as
luck.
The cameraman, yes. I must be your eyes, dear reader. No, but that's why he had to be there. Like he was curious.
And all of these things happen like back to back to back. It's like it's all just crammed in the first 5 chapters.
Yeah. I mean, so Dan is, and you're right. Like the one criticism here of the Jackalopians is that Dan is not a real character. Dan is a perspective character. He's just there to receive the story.
You know what a good example of that is? I was talking about this Dave a little bit earlier. Y'all, you remember Great Gatsby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what he is? He's a broken version of Nick Carraway. Is this Great Gatsby? If Nick met Gatsby once, and then he jerked off to the tennis girl, and then he meets up with Gatsby's dad, and then Gatsby's dad explains everything. He doesn't meet Daisy. Right. He doesn't see the green light.
He's not. Yeah. Well, so anyway, we'll get into it, and that will be clearer and clearer to listeners as we go on. So eventually, Dan is contacted again by James Haji LaRue, and is invited to a gathering in Virginia, and he will not need to wear a mask. It will be a social event, and it will be the first one of any consequence that Dan has been to in quite some time. So he's trying to get back out there, and so he meets the Jackalopians, and that's part.
That's sort of towards the end of part 1. And question to you guys, because for me, this book. You guys have both had the Literally Me book. This book is oddly specifically relevant to me in a lot of weird ways. I won't get too doxy, but I have an extreme familiarity with every location in this book, pretty much. Not even just the DC area, but South Dakota as well, and Sioux Falls and stuff. For some reason, this dude walks in my footsteps where I've spent a lot of time and
is this meta art? Are you going to reveal that you yourself are Mark Marlow this whole time?
I'm Haji, dude. It's about me.
There is I know how you feel because there's another book, another 4chan self-pub book that it takes place literally in the specific neighborhood of the city I live in, and it was very weird to read that. So
the dude was living 2 buildings down from you, writing this book. Probably.
Yeah, and I don't live in New York, so otherwise that would not be remarkable. Yeah. So,
but I have been to Clarendon a lot, and so that really. At least for me, the description of Clarendon and my knowledge of it, it's extremely apt. It seriously does feel for anyone that hasn't been there, it's like a overgrown college dorm downtown. It seriously has that vibe.
Okay. So Mark is writing location very accurately.
Exactly.
But he's writing location with very good fidelity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say that, you know, there obviously we all have some criticisms of the book, but it's never confusing where stuff is. Sometimes authors have a really bad time describing like physical locations, and movements inside of locations. I think that Marlow does that really well. And it's a good thing because there's a lot of different locations
and down to street names too.
Yeah.
If you're from that area, like those street names all have a lot of significance, and even like the routes he describes, like it's very clearly well thought out. And I'd agree with your compliment there, Cap, that it's very has a good sense of place. Even I would assume for people that aren't as familiar with the area.
It's Joyce-esque, because that's what Dublin does. Like, Ulysses got so popular, and it's so, like, detailed, like, that you actually have plaques in Dublin of where the characters are during each chapter of the book. So maybe, like, once Jackalopians hits big, man, you'll be walking down Clarendon. It's like, this is where Dan gets jerked off in the Greek restaurant.
Mark, commission some plaques. Do it yourself. Be the change.
Astro's a good Greek place. Well, it's not good, but it's like a nice fast food Greek place down there. That's where I imagine him getting the jerk off. Head down there sometime, Mark, if you don't go regularly.
That's where you're getting the nut buddy.
That's where the sea change begins.
But what else at the meeting? Like the meeting itself.
Well, the Jackalopians don't get introduced until chapter 6.
Well, yeah. So that's the end of part 1. So the Jackalopians, so he goes to this meeting, and they start by saluting the flag of the Jackalopians and a mounted jackalope head that is on the wall. So this is happening in the private event room of a bar. So they've, you know, all the guys are sort of filing in. Dan meets the main narrator, Scott, and he meets what's his
Sneedman. Base Sneedman.
Yeah, Base Sneedman.
Well, there are a few
Emma,
guys.
the waitress. Carnahan, the douche friend. Sneedman, the nerd, and then there's
Baron.
The Baron.
Todd Sneedman, and the Baron, a wealthy Colombian,
rocking some A10s.
So yeah, so the Javier Malay. So. They have a meeting, and they go through all of this basically phony, pomp and circumstance, like all this ceremony.
The blood is real.
Which is what real fraternal orders are like. I mean, that is how they're done.
Oh, really, Cap?
So, what?
Oh, really, Cap?
You
Yes.
weren't at the sidebar, like, internal meeting, Gabe? I guess you weren't attending. You weren't invited.
Listen, I run logistics on the Talmudic order. All right, is this just a side gig for me?
So I don't think Mark's probably not like an actual Freemason, especially because he's definitely under the age of 50.
And the woke Pope banned it, I think.
It's right. Well, no, it's been disallowed for a very long time. Although it's weird that Pope Francis would reiterate that Catholics are not allowed to be Freemasons when he's like blessing gay marriages.
Sus. Well, actually, historically, wasn't it back and forth? Because I remember de Maistre was a Freemason. And he was a hypertrack.
Lots of Catholics have been Freemasons. And I mean, if you're there are plenty. Without I don't want to get sidetracked into whether or not Catholics should be allowed to be Freemasons, but
they can't be Jackalopians.
but they certainly can be Jackalopians. Kind of. Actually, there's an internal conflict in Haji's character about to what degree he can actually like even LARP worship of the jackalope.
Me and Gabe
It's
were
one of
actually
the best
debating
parts.
this before you came
Yeah.
on. So, yeah, this might be something we have to follow up on at the end because we strongly
Yeah, it's
disagree
one of the
on
best
this.
aspects. It's the best aspect of the book, actually.
There is a through line in this book about like being called to Catholicism, and it is one of the like stronger thematic through lines in the book, and it is kind of the heart of the book, and is in fact why probably Mark didn't cut Dan as a perspective character. But I think that it was still partially a mistake.
Partially?
So, well, I mean, I think that anyway, we'll
let's
get to it.
let's finish part 1 and we can dive into it
Yeah.
when we get into chapter 2.
So they have this meeting, and we meet the crazy cast of characters. We meet Scott, and Carnahan, and the Baron,
Sneedman.
and Emma the waitress, and Todd Sneedman. Carnahan, James LaRoe, and Scott were all college buddies. So they've known each other for a very long time. The Baron, basically knows them through the Jackalopians. He is a wealthy, globetrotting Latino playboy.
Plantation owning. Latino playboy.
Owns a plantation in Colombia, and is charming, and is the Gomez Adams kind of
Yeah,
character.
he's a BAP character come to life.
Yeah, he is a complete vitalist. Yeah, that's right. So, let's see, and Todd Sneedman, who is extremely bought in to the
Jackalopians,
the managerial aspects of the Jackalopians. He is a complete he's a total rules lawyer, and he's taking everything.
He's a theory cell, is what it is. He's
He is a theory cell.
Far too seriously.
Yeah.
He's your typical 19-year-old Redditor. He's like one minute he's a communist, but no, that's not esoteric enough. I have to be like a fucking Ho Chi Minh esoteric orthodox. Like, he writes a dissertation. He's like a month before he joins the Jackalopes, he was a Maoist integralist. Mm-hmm. He wants to turn like the Catholic papacy into like a dango Marxist.
Right.
He was one of the few caricatures that actually worked. The humor worked.
He was literally you.
No.
In fact, his name's Sneedman. Very nice touch.
I mean, Todd Sneedman is very funny, and fights battles that absolutely don't need to be fought with an insane amount of dedication. It really Todd is like a
Listen, Todd is stone cold.
Todd is a Grunhauerian character who didn't learn how to
don't disparage.
He didn't learn how to hide his power level.
No,
yeah,
Grun would never. Actually, when you think about it, Sneedman was loyal. Actually,
yeah, he
but
was
still,
a good guy. Like, he literally was just trying to get everyone to agree with him.
He was a proper reformist. He was a loyalist.
Yeah, he was a good. He was Grunhauerian.
He was a loyalist, and I will say, so Todd is making a very big deal about the distinction between the Jackalopes and what's called a Wolpertinger, which is a mythical creature from Germany rather than the American West. He's right. They're different. They're different.
They're objectively different.
And he's trying to make the argument that the flying jackalope, a variant of the jackalope, is a Wolpertingerist heresy, and it's done with an exceptional amount, like far too much seriousness for how stupid the fucking debate is. This guy will die on any hill.
He's stone cold, man. He's stone cold.
Yeah. So, but he is right. Like, jackalopes don't have wings.
Yeah,
Come on.
that's
like, it looks too much like a Wolpertinger. Look up a Wolpertinger on Wikipedia, and you'll see a jackalope with wings and some tusks.
Look at the second picture down in particular.
Like, it's different.
It's a fucking nightmare. It's not cute or fun anymore.
I think it's the duck head is cute.
Yeah.
I like the duck head.
And most importantly, a Wolpertinger does not have the connection to the American mythos that a jackalope does.
That is true. It's more heritage based. You're right.
Yeah. So it can't be a jackalope because it is because it's a Wolpertinger. It's German. So and in the same way, it would be improper for a bunch of Bavarians to get together and worship the jackalope. They would have to worship the Wolpertinger because that's their rabbit with horns.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's nice to know that Cap is an Orthodox Sneedmanian denomination.
In hindsight, having read the book now, Sneedman was like literally right from top to bottom. Like he's set up as a what is it called?
Unbelievable dickhead.
He's a dickhead, but he's correct. He's right at every step.
Yeah, he's not wrong. He's just an asshole.
Yeah, he did literally nothing wrong.
Yeah. Well, he did stalk the head of the Chamber of Commerce of that town in Wyoming.
She just met him. What an uppity, frigid bitch,
Yeah, but she was answering his letters. I assume, she knows about the existence of the jackalopes.
Well, yeah. Anyway, so there's a section where they refer to the head of the Chamber of Commerce of what was the town's name?
Somewhere in South Dakota.
Is it Sioux Falls or is it somewhere else? It's a random small town, isn't it?
Douglas.
Okay.
Douglas, Wyoming.
I have a point on this series of chapters, the meetings. It relates to most of the book, but it's one of the components of the structural issues I have with this book. The chapter breaks don't make a ton of sense to me. Particularly here, it's just like it's one meeting. I believe it's spread over 3 or 4 chapters, and it just kind of keeps going on and on, which is fine if that's how long the meeting takes. But I don't know. I just want to at least register it here. This is the first time I noticed. I was like, wow, it's like the chapter just ends and it's like from one conversation, like it's like someone just walked across the room rather than like a conclusion to a series of events in a more significant way.
And also, it's the only Jackalopian scene proper. Like, this is basically the last you will see of everyone actually partaking in Jackalopian activities.
In my mental image of the book, it was a bigger part for sure.
There is the other meeting, but it's a meeting that is retold by Scott to Dan. So, this is the only Jackalopians meeting that Dan ends up attending.
It sucks because it's really good, actually.
Yeah, it's not that he avoids it. He just anyway. So he goes to this. The Baron ends up seducing the waitress Emma, and everyone basically goes their separate ways. And then there is a time skip.
Well, actually, real quick, you forgot the scene where Dan has to cut open his hand, but they can't find a knife, so he has to use his car keys.
You have to, in order to join the Jackalopians, you have to rub your blood onto the stuffed jackalope head
and swear an oath.
And there's and swear an oath, and Dan does so, and the degree to which that this is like a LARP is made abundantly clear by, not having a knife or any sharp implement with which to do this ritual, etc.
The LARP a little bit blurs a little bit here because the characters are actually quite good here because the dialogue here is a lot better because basically he talks in like stereotypes in the first 5 chapters, but here you get the closest to actually sincere dialogue and like normal dialogue and genuinely funny dialogue. And also another good piece of prose writing, of technical writing, if you notice the colors on the flag of the Jackalopians, which is, of course, gold and white. Which is,
it's the same as the Vatican flag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was one other seed here that was really good, and it was I believe it's first mentioned here, is repeated later, that they started the meeting more as a right-wing group, and that it just evolved like less and less political over time since like 2016, kind of mirroring, I think, a lot of us experienced of like, oh wow, I'm sure this election is going to change a lot of things, and then increasingly like, oh wow, this system is completely like under control of something else, and I guess I'll just enjoy what I can. And they're kind of isolating themselves into this, their own, it turns into sort of a party group. But also they're celebrating, I guess, their own, mindset and being themselves.
They're mostly just there for the fellowship and the memes.
Yeah, it's a mannerbund. It's the meeting of the copium dealers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because Dan says, like, you know what? I don't care about the Jackalopian things, but like, you know what? I feel warm. He literally describes it as warmth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, Carnegie's singing, he's a jolly good fellow. Carnahan, sorry. Baron is doing his cigarette trick in a corner. You feel it. You feel the homeboy feel to it.
Yeah, with your bros. I think that's it for this first section. I don't think there's any other.
And also, I'm sorry, just real quick in terms of structure, because I think this should have been the opening scene. This should have been a typical record scratch. He's like, yeah, I'm kissing a bloody Jackalopian head. You're probably wondering how I got here. I think that would have been a lot better.
I bet you're wondering how I got here.
It's cliche, but it would have worked a lot better.
It all started. Yeah,
it would have worked. That's actually I was going to mention this later, but yes, should start here with Scott as the POV, and then there should have been more. I have a lot of structural concerns with it, and one of them is all the preamble that doesn't. It just doesn't produce a lot for me, as we'll see. So diving into part 2, I can start us off here. I don't actually remember where they were meeting, but he meets at or Dan goes out to a restaurant with Scott. Scott sends
they run into each other. Or one of them calls the other one. They're like, all right, let's get dinner. And
they meet up and grab some, get cocktails or whatever, waiting on their meal. And then Scott basically just lights him up. He says, like, all right, no. He says, I want the story.
Now I'm going to tell you about the last 20 years.
He becomes a Morrowind NPC.
The Wikipedia page just pops up. It's like, holy shit, scroll.
The dialogue box pops up.
Dude, this is, all right, I have a couple words prepared here.
Dan gets locked into an unskippable cutscene, and it lasts for it says directed by Hideo Kojima.
There is one joke that is pretty good that comes out of this format, and that's remember the waiter comes in after
the maitre d', yes.
After he says like pussy or something like 5 times, and he's like, "Excuse me, sir, you're upsetting the other customers." And he's like,
"Please keep it down."
Okay.
And also, we closed like 3 hours ago,
which was good. Like that's a good bit, but it
is a good bit, but it also reveals that Mark is at least slightly aware of the structural issues that the way that this scene is going, like the structural issues it presents to have the scene go this way, and he's trying to like make light of it. But that's really, in my opinion, that's kind of the best of a bad job.
Exactly.
It's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's like, it's not gonna, write it differently.
And it's not necessary. You could have done it.
There's none of the content.
Mm-hmm.
None of the content needed to be specifically presented in this way, and could have been presented in a more natural way.
Let me just explain it for people that haven't read it, which I'm sure is quite a few people listening. And then I have like 2 sub points to make, and then I'd love to hear your guys like feedback on it. So specifically, what we are looking at is for the next. So we read this one, I think chapter 11. I think this is when we switch over, or 12.
Yeah.
So 75% of the book to go, basically. And I would say of that 70%, about, I don't know, 90% of it is now going to be in this format of Scott telling Dan the history. And it's not the way you think as a reader what that's going to look like of, he says, let me sit you down and tell you a long story. Turn the page, and it's just all in prose. No, everything is in dialogue quotes from here on out. So imagine like 50 to 100 pages of just every single line is in quotes, and then dialogue, very dialogue heavy within these quotes. So quotes within quotes. You know, it's grammatically appropriately formatted with a single quote within the double quote. It leads to a lot of confusion. Like there was more than a few times where I was like you turn the page and it says like, I disagree with that statement. And you're like, wait a minute, is that Scott saying he disagrees with the statement? Or is that Haji disagreeing with the statement? Scott's relaying him disagreeing with the statement on. Yeah.
One thing that is kind of funny is that isn't there's some sort of IQ test for if you are below 90 IQ or something like that, you can't understand how a story in which one person is telling a story to another character that was related to them by a third character that contains speech and yet still more characters who are in this this inception of stories.
So what you're saying is we're too low IQ for this story.
No. I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
I got filtered.
To give Mark absolutely maximum credit for this very awkwardly organized way of delivering the narrative. Maybe it was a deliberate filter.
No 90 IQ people.
It's like it's like hard filter.
No breakfast.
It's literally unreadable. They have no idea what's going on.
Straight up Joycean. We're reading it with modern Joyce.
Yeah,
but I did have a third person narration directly delivered to a first person narrator. but I did have breakfast.
Right. But I did. Yes, it's like, but I did have breakfast. Why do you keep saying I didn't have breakfast?
Why do you keep saying this is a third person narrative? This third person narrative. This is a first person narrative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. My two sub points of this structure, just to try and organize it, because I think I'm worried about our thoughts being too scattered on the structure issue. So,
yeah,
the two aspects of it, structure and POV. The structure side, we have a lot of scenes crammed into a small space over these coming chapters. Like there is a ton going on over a very long timeline. That's the structure side of it. Like we're talking about childhood, college, just in this next section, really quickly covered this road, post-college road trip, and a lot of it being in dialogue, in scene. Okay, that's one side of it. The other one being the POV side of it. This isn't, I don't think this qualifies as a frame story technically, because it's delivered to us into a first person point of view. So I'm like,
right. Yeah. It's from a first person perspective, right? You're always seeing things through Dan. But in this section, it is Scott telling Dan stories that Haji, James LaRue, I keep
the actual main character,
mixing it up. Yeah, the actual main character of the story, told to him.
Yeah.
And ones in which Scott was personally present.
Yeah, it's a mix.
So it's a mix, and then later on, Scott will tell stories that were related to him by other people. That were related to him by other people, covering events that then directly involve him.
Yeah.
Again.
Until 4 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
The last aspect of the POV I just want to cover before we shifted or you guys had other thoughts on it, I want to make sure I added this, was the dialogue format of that makes it it limits the way language can be used believably. And I think it gives a lot of challenges to the writing style itself. So, I don't know. Do you guys want to guess the $5 David word? I feel like I use like every time or almost every episode of what I feel like this prose is lacking.
Ooh. Oh, good
specificity.
Ding, 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 ding. Yes, there's a
specificity
gap. Can you think of a single time like taste or smell or physical sensation of touch is mentioned during like these sections, which are like, it's like I struggle to think of one. And like at a certain point I started trying to keep an eye out for it, and it was pretty rare because when you're writing in dialogue, it's hard to be too flowery with it being believable.
Well, but it's also there's also like too much, but simultaneously, like he absolutely could have done that, because there are also issues of the perspective, because the way that like Dan is telling this story isn't just in dialogue. Not Dan. The way that Scott is telling this story isn't just in dialogue. He's telling this story in like prose.
Yeah, as a story. Yes.
Like he's telling this story as a story. I mean, it's, he would say things like, let's see,
down to the position where they are in the room, hands in pockets.
Yeah, and it's just like,
yeah. Dan makes a joke about it. He's like, did he even tell you about how like he kissed her like with the tongues and everything? He's like, oh yeah, of course. He's very detail oriented.
It's like, let's see. So he's talking about the internal like struggles of Haji, and he after Haji kind of loses his faith because there is a shit lib priest at his college. And let's see. Only 2 months later, our freshman year finished on a bright May day. Finals had just ended, and Haji and I walked across campus one last time. The next day, we would part ways in different directions, heading home for the summer. As we walked in, I could hear faintly in the distance the chapel bell begin its chime to call the faithful to Mass. I could tell Haji heard it too. He jerked his head and almost stopped. But then he just turned back and kept walking. The chimes weren't part of his life anymore. They're just another background sound, a type of medieval flair, like the Gothic architecture around the quad, that served only to give this 21st century college an air of tradition for the kinds of parents who review admissions materials. And
wow.
In that section, it's like, wow, you're a really good storyteller, Scott.
right off the dome too, Scott. Wow.
Yeah. So it stresses the imagination to have Scott be telling the story in this way to his perspective character. And I think that, while we can get into the narrative a little more, I'm just going to go ahead and say that Scott and Dan should have been combined as a single character.
Yep.
Because
named Scott.
Named Scott. Yeah.
Scott Daniels.
And Scott, because the other thing is that other than the stories, Scott has no like arc that isn't related to James LaRue. Right.
And
he has no arc that isn't related to Haji.
Yeah, and Dan steals James's arc.
In what way?
Dan, because
Dan has no connection to James's arc.
No.
None.
Yeah, well, no. The ending, we'll get to the ending later, where he reverts or converts. He basically takes, because Haji's arc doesn't really end properly. He's like,
right? Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. It's like that scene only makes sense if he was affected by the story of Haji.
Exactly, but why would a guy who just got told a story about a third guy, right?
Third degrees.
Be converted. And we can get into this later. But why would he be converted? It would make a lot more sense for Scott to be moved by his direct relationship with this longtime friend of his, and the events that they in fact like went through together.
Yes, it makes more sense. It's like that's why I said about the whole Great Gatsby thing. It's like if he met Gatsby once and then got told everything, he's like, man, rich people suck. I'm going back to the Midwest. Okay, that's basically it.
It's like Scott is Nick Carraway, and Dan is another guy who's getting told the story of the Great Gatsby.
He's the reader. Yeah, it's me.
He is the reader. Dan's the reader. Yeah, in most respects.
But the thing is, the pattern is so odd because he's telling him this story. It's broken up, so he tells him the story in the restaurant. They separate. Dan has this weird psychosexual drama with his girl. Then the final arc is him staying at Scott's place, finding bullet holes in the flag. He's like, "What's the deal?" Then the rest of the entire book is Scott telling him the story, and finally,
Scott tells him the rest of the book while he's standing, while he's basically waiting for Katie to come down from her boyfriend's apartment.
Yes, no, her handprints are still fresh upon the cock. She just finished sexually torturing him in a restaurant.
Plays with his head. We're skipping ahead a little bit, but yeah.
Anyways, we're way out of order. Yeah, we're way out of order.
No, I'm just saying that the structure is literally. It's so weird because what we're talking about right now is conversation 1 with Scott. A little pause break and then back to Scott.
Yeah, it's hard not to cover the structure issue without jumping around because it's just it just creates such an echo through it all. And I would say this is kind of the original sin of the book, and what I think is what's holding it back from being really strong.
Agree.
Well, because it's impossible to talk from the narrative of Dan. Because what does it talk about? Dan goes to club bar once. He hears a story. Then he goes to date with a girlfriend. Hears a story again, and then he converts to Catholicism. That's the chronological order. That's basically that's the only way to talk about it chronologically.
Yep. Okay. The first part of part 2 is when. Haji came from a devout Catholic family, and he went to Georgetown specifically because it is a Catholic school, and quickly discovered that it is only nominally a Catholic school. And then you get the whole thing with Slippentine, which the end of which I just read. And then you get his relationship with
the freckle girl, though. That's not. You don't want to miss that. I'm sure
the redhead.
Gabe is drooling over that. Was she a redhead? I couldn't remember.
Yes, the one he makes out to in How to Save a Life, and I Got a Feeling by Black Eyed Peas next to the little campfire.
And then then Haji and the girl go on the road trip, and we get the bikers, and we get the jackalope. So,
Gabe, what was it that you wanted to call out there?
The call out is because we get the origin story for the actual protagonist, which is James, the Haji. He's the Gatsby figure, basically. The problem with the retelling, Scott tells the story of James, but the problem here of the college is a structural problem with Mark Marlow's writing. The protagonists never actually suffer anything, if you notice this. Not really. 90% of the time, the consequences of dealing with wokeness or the politics, he's like, oh my god, look at the crazy libs. 90% of the time, it's just complaining about what libs say. The libs are purely caricatures of themselves. Because Father Slippertine literally makes this man lose his faith just by being a pure shitlib.
Right.
Because think about it, he just does shitlibbery. He speaks in shitlib, and that makes James lose his faith. Because like he's like, oh, you chose Aquinas as your essayist. Well, you should choose this Afrofuturist kind of guy. He does Salvation Gospel. Where the church is too patriarchal. Like he gets a bunch of buzzwords together, and every time he wants to make a political point, it's like, okay, a wall of text. I'm sorry, it is literally the right-wing version of the wall of text meme, where he just has a leftist speak an entire block of text in leftist gibberish that doesn't mean anything. And go ahead.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so that's a there is a lot good to be be about Marlow's writing and dialogue.
He's good at dialogue, actually, which
like
is very
confusing. When he's like in the once he's in the meat of it. But there are several sections where it gets very like Randian in its level of how didactic it's being, where they'll just like speak a mission statement
in very inappropriate times, by the way.
When it's short and sweet, it's always at its strongest. Like I think of later in the book, I want to call that out, the like some of the CNN interviews and things like that. Like those are funny. I thought well delivered. But yeah, some of the longer rants where it's just like keeps going on. It's just like
no. The thing is, he can make punchy jokes when he talks about like, you know what? I don't want her to find out. I still jerk off to the memory of her pussy. Like, or Carnahan's dialogue. He's good with banter. Thing is, he's good with short and sweet banter. He's very good at it. But the thing, and James is our most well-developed character. Any good prose, this is where we bring up the whole paganism, is that James was a tradcath. His brother really died in Afghanistan with rosary beads in his pocket. And he talks about like his family is like oddly founding stock Catholics, like they helped found Maryland, right? So he's 100% a tradcath. He takes his vow of chastity very seriously, and one of the few times he feels truly connected to God. And this is the contrast me and Dave were talking about earlier with the pseudo-paganism, is during the celebration of Corpus Christi, which is one of the few Catholic ceremonies that is held outdoors. And he receives the bread of Christ, but the bread of Christ is inside a golden scepter, and the scepter, right behind the scepter, is the sun, literally the solar sun. And he just feels one with God amongst the nature. So there's a subtle pagan through line throughout the entirety of the novel, by the way, because he loses his faith in the institution of the Catholic Church, literally indoors within the mostly empty chapel, right? And this bread no longer is the body of Christ, because he refused to even chew on the cracker, because he felt like it was disrespectful to the body to like break his bones. Like that's how much of a hyper tradcath he was. And to throw it away with Father Slippertine, which is a great name, by the way, it's very Dickens-esque. But My major rewrite advice would have been this: you want to show because you already know the reader agrees with you. We all agree with this. Well, instead of spouting this, show the effects of it. Make it personal. So, for example, with Father Slippertine, let's say when
are you saying show don't tell?
No. You know what? This is one of the few times where that Reddit ass remark fits. Because how much more impactful would he be if Father Slippertine said like, during class, instead of the whole dialogue about, oh, I'm a Marxist, patriarchal, spouting off leftist gibberish, he just says, as a Catholic and as a Christian, the war in Afghanistan was unethical and evil, and anyone who participated was evil, right? And then it makes it personal with James because his brother died. Then you can actually have a back and forth because you notice James never talks with Father Slippertine. He never talks back to him. There's no head-to-head. You make the conflict fuse to political and the personal. His brother really died for the war. And then he is a father. He is literally Father Slippertine. He's supposed to respect him. So he loses his faith in the church, in God, through Slippertine, who actively hates him. So, like, for example, that one scene with Father Slippertine where he's washing the black guy's feet, I was expecting for him to turn around and make James kiss his feet. Like, go on, Brother James.
Right.
Yeah. Go kiss this person. But he never does. The horrors, the horrors that James suffers is to watch the events.
Well, that's part of the formatting. We're covering so much material so fast that we can't dwell and yet make it experience it the way you're describing it, right? Because it can't just be about the priest. It also has to be about the freckled girl and him fucking her. It also has to be his brother that died. Like, we're getting all of this within like a chapter or two.
And it's third degrees. That's the problem.
Yeah, and that just makes the scope of it was just too broad. Like, yeah.
Yeah, in a single sentence, it will make it so much easier because he wants to have the political commentary, right? You know, it would be super easy because this story takes place in the early 2010s. Trayvon Martin, right? 2014, wherever the fuck. You know, it'd be super easy to make James lose his faith, and also you want to keep your own the libs. Have him have the mattress girl rape scandal because Scott says that happens to him. Pseudo, a girl accuses him of raping her when he tries to he sees a poor girl passed out and he wants to get her to her dorm. Instead of Scott, have James have that happen. Father Slippertine is like, oh well, this is a serious allegation because Slippertine hates him. And then that makes him lose his faith because he is Chase. He takes his chastity very seriously. So you have him literally physically suffer from wokeness and from politics. He loses his friends, and this makes his relationship with Scott actually more important because he stays loyal to him. He loses his family, and at the end, the punch of the story is that he still shows up to communion, and the very man who tries to literally ruin his life and not just speak woke bullshit to actually hurt him, he's supposed to show respect to the man who is giving him the body of Christ. He's supposed to expect that Slippertine is good at the end of the day, and that makes him break his faith. He is ruined in the secular sense and the spiritual sense. You save so much words, and it's a lot more impact.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it, and I don't want to be overly prescriptive, but to add on to that, to my too much scope comment, we also in this same section get the post-college, we get a new girlfriend introduced who is going to vanish very soon, so don't get too attached to her, of Haji's girlfriend. They have a dinner party and blah blah blah. They're moving out west, and then I think probably the most keynote part of the whole book is this motorcycle segment you mentioned, Cap. Yeah, this is just top to bottom, keynote supreme. How Haji became Haji, and this is essentially they're driving through South Dakota. They meet some biker dudes, and they're
Wild Pete.
Wild Pete.
Yeah, they meet Wild Pete and his buddies, who are
base boomers,
older than boomers. They might be, they're pretty old. They may even be older than boomers. They might be greatest generation or not greatest, silent generation, but they're pretty old, and they're bikers, but they're also businessmen because he owns a huge motorcycle dealership, and he's very into Harleys and selling motorcycles. So they're talking about business trade areas in the middle of
the greater Sioux Falls area, regional area.
Yeah, Wild Pete's we got the best. We have the best prices on Harley Davidsons in the greater Sioux Falls area. And they're talking about business trade areas that are 100% the narcissism of small differences, right? The east side or the west side of Sioux Falls, and it matters if it's Sioux Falls, South Dakota, or Sioux Falls, Iowa. It's really funny, and it is some goofball shit, but it's got a lot of heart.
It's Kino goofball.
And the way that they are written has a very distinct voice. You can extrapolate from their strange behavior what the belief systems of these guys would be. They're just they're excellent.
It's the white man's Bloods versus Crips, basically.
It's goofball hijinks. So Wild Pete has a jackalope strapped to the back of his motorcycle, and when Haji sees it, he is entranced by it, and he's like, "What is that?" And Wild Pete starts describing the specifications of his motorcycle. He's like, "No. What's that taxidermy animal?"
And he's basically under mind control the rest of this. Like, it's great characterization. Like, he is just like along for the ride for whatever these like spirits of the old America that these guys represent and the Jackalope represents. Like, whatever they want, he is 100% like a warrior for the cause. Even to the detriment of his girlfriend, who like wants to have sex, and he's like, "Sorry, babe.
Sorry, babe. I gotta go. I have a greater calling." And so, Wild Pete and his group are on their way to a trade show. Basically, they do a lot of orders at this show, and they want to at this meetup or motorcycle thing, whatever.
Yeah, it's like a biker meetup.
And he was telling Haji about about a rival that he has, and how and it's 100% like friend enemy distinction here, because the other guys are basically the exact same, but they're not with Wild Pete. Therefore, they're sidewinders, and they don't know shit about motorcycles, and they don't have the deepest discounts in the Greater Sioux Falls area, and they're hoarding in on our territory because they're going to this meetup that we've been going to. So,
and are not malicious in the slightest, by the way. Like,
well, and they steal his, but they steal his jackalope
and leave a note that says you have to come and kneel before me and admit. Was it that I'm the better? Like,
they leave a note that says
you can't match the price match guarantee.
yeah. Oh God, hold on. It's pause real quick. 1 sec.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The note is worth.
Yeah,
is worth
dude, they're probably one of the best characters actually in the book.
I would read a book just about these guys.
Yeah, they should have came back in the end. You never see them again, actually.
Oh yeah, summon them on the beach like a Pokemon or something, or like a Final Fantasy. Like
no, it's it's
all right. All right, I got it. Okay, so, like that evening after meeting them, Haji's girlfriend's getting frisky, and they're about to pan to a window with the curtains blowing, and Wild Pete starts banging on the door, and when James reluctantly goes to answer it, Wild Pete explains that the jackalope has been stolen by his rival Bo Slatterly, and that a note has been left on his bike. And I will read that note. Dear Mild Pete, I stole your jackalope. If you ever want to see it again, meet me tonight at the Circle T Campground, Lot 318. Come to my campsite, bow down to me, kiss my feet, and admit that I, Bo Slatterly, offer the best prices on new and used motorcycles in the Greater Sioux Falls Metro Statistical Region. If you don't comply by midnight tonight, then I will pour lighter fluid all over your jackalope and throw it in the campfire. Sincerely, Bo Slatterly, President and CEO, Slatterly's All-American Motorsports, home of the price match guarantee.
That was a Kino rendition right there. Bravo.
So they need Haji's help because they're all beat up old men with bum legs and shit. And
yeah, he's got those young knees.
He's got those young knees.
He's a star football player that actually comes into it.
Yep. So they need him to, run in and steal back the jackalope. So they get him there. We have a little scene where they're sneaking up on the campfire of Bo Slatterly and Slatterly's men.
And they're just talking about their nephews.
And they're just like talking about their nephews. He's got a great place up in
401k and
how's the 401k looking? So eventually when the time is right, Haji bursts out, grabs the jackalope, and for good measure grabs a duck decoy.
Was it a duck?
Yeah, a duck decoy
Yeah.
that was on Slatterly's motorcycle.
Dude, the double dip was hilarious because the guys are like, really?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, and they're also like, hey, they're like not aggressive in a way that like even a reasonable person might be.
Because they're old. They get tired after 10 steps.
Yeah. They can't chase him down because they're fucking 65, and so as Wild Pete picks him up on the motorcycle as they're running away, and it's a successful raid. And of course, you know, James is transformed by these hijinks, and has found a something that he can believe in again. He's returned to a vital idea of the world.
He has rewiled.
Yes.
Dare I say, does the jackalope represent an atavistic drive?
Oh, absolutely.
Of Americanism?
It's an American freedom-seeking wildness, right?
And you notice he gets
but it's also virtuous.
And that's the thing. He gets rejuvenated through action. Logos. The church's logos, the actual logic and talking and discussing, has been neutralized to spirit and his will of action, the will to believe, the will to be. But he's get rejuvenated. He becomes possessed by the jackalope through doing this. He feels the call of the jackalope, and he actually achieves something for real, for actually doing something. And that's what I think partly what makes these the strongest point of this novel is the unanswered question, which is the implicit ties between the pagan, the jackalope. There's all of his paganistic kind of. There's a spirituality to the jackalope because he takes it seriously. I mean, you realize we make the joke about Dan cutting his hand with car keys, but the other guys, they literally did cut their hands to actually worship the jackalope, and he actually he's a law nerd with the jackalope. He takes the oaths very seriously, and every time everyone says, "Oh, it's just a joke, James," or "It's just a joke, Haji," he's like, "No, we are going to honor our oaths." So he feels rejuvenated. He literally forms a manor bund, basically, around the jackalope, and he's rejuvenated through the spirit. But it's oddly enough, he managed to make a marriage through it by using the jackalope. He kind of has this uneasy alliance between his natural faith, which comes back to him, but also this vitalism kind of never leaves him, though, which is an interesting aspect of this book. I wish kind of he delved up a little more.
It's a very Catholic concern too, particularly modern, obviously under the current Pope. Like how can you be a true faithful Catholic under that Pope? Like it's something I, as a lapsed Catholic myself, I don't know how people cope with that.
Nowadays, if you say "Is the Pope Catholic?" it's not a shorthand for saying yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like no, but really, I'm asking.
Hey, Sedevanticist for the win.
But yeah, absolutely keynote section. It's a shame it's only 3 or 4 chapters. I wish it was 30 because that was it's like King of the Hill core. Just dude,
it's
really
the peak of the humor. Imagine, because think about it. Imagine if fucking Sneedman interacts with Wild Pete. Like, the novel should have been just Wild Pete and the Jackalopians hanging out to see who can make the real, pilgrimage to the statue.
That's kind of what I expected more of actually coming into this. I thought it would be more of a frat bro humor type thing than it turned out to be.
Yeah.
Which is just my expectations coming in. And I think that's the end of part 2. Was there anything after him? He gets a jackalope and then he gets his own and takes it home.
Wild Pete and his guys give Haji the jackalope. So they end up giving him a jackalope. And
it becomes the jackalope.
And it is the jackalope, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he bullies some people at the Trump during the Trump speeches. He has Scott and some nerds over, and he makes a nerd cry or something, and he's like, "All right, you gotta bow to that jackalope. You're gonna show respect to it." It's one of the early.
Oh, it was.
I think that occurs here.
It was. Yeah, it's Scott, I thought you said these guys were interested in policy.
In politics.
In policy. It was policy. Yeah.
And we're just talking about Jackalope lore the entire time. But real quick, it's also revealed that he actually, I think it's this part, sorry, just real quick. He's actually not a Haji, because he actually never did bow down before the statue.
Oh, yeah, he got
That's
embarrassed.
a little later.
Is it here, or was it here?
I think it was at the very end of this. He's like, yeah, just so you know, like, Sneedman's claims, like, there actually is something to it. But he's like, don't bring it up. And he says, what was it? He stayed at the wrong hotel, but everyone knows that. But the true thing is, he was nervous to do it during the daytime, right?
So he didn't want to,
like,
this didn't happen at the same time, right? The Hajj did not happen at the same.
Oh yeah, the Hajj was like years later, but Dan is informed.
But Dan is informed
at the end
that
of
the rule, the bylaws that they came up with say that you have to prostrate yourself in front of the statue of a jackalope that's in Douglas, Wyoming, for 1 hour, and Haji was too embarrassed to do it during the day, so he was going to wait until night, and then Haji, Scott says that Haji felt basically the intervention of the Holy Spirit, like tapping him on the shoulder to stop him from committing idolatry.
Literal idolatry.
Yeah. So he never.
I'm just holding up my Sneedman was right sign.
Sneedman was right.
Now number 2,
yeah.
Mark 2.
Essentially.
And of course, the terms and conditions.
Haji never completed the Hajj according to the terms and conditions set by the Jackalopians, rules LARP.
He's a poser.
So, yes, he's a poser. So, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, do you have anything else on this one, Gabe? Otherwise, we can do the interlude, the Dan interlude in part 3.
Actually, the coming part is probably one of my favorite parts. So yeah, we can skip to that.
Which one?
The coming part, the next time Dave talks to Scott.
Dan.
Dan.
Yeah, Dan. Yeah. Okay, all right, so then, moving on to part 3, also known as Scott Lecture number 2, and the conclusion. We have the Dan interlude of, essentially here, he just says he has, a shitload of work. He also, we forgot to mention at the beginning of part 2, he drunk texts his old girlfriend, Katie. Yeah, trying to hit her up, and she just blocks him or something. He totally ignores him. But now, at the end of part 2, before part 3, we have this interlude where he's just working a shitload. Like, he's going, and he's an attorney. Does a bunch of research, and he's totally out of pocket for 4 months or something like that. He's out for a while, does not keep up with the Jackalopians. Then he work clears up, and he gets a text from Katie saying, "Oh no, actually there's two Katies." First, she has him come up, saying "Oh, let's get back together."
Oh God, yeah.
They meet up the first time, and he comes an hour early or something, and she never shows up. He's there for 4 hours, just dicking around in a restaurant. And then she says
No.
Oh,
I didn't break up. Actually, I fell back in love with Dylan. I'm sorry. I hope you forgive me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which was, I actually forgot about that until I was telling the story. That was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
It couldn't be me, bro. Then it happens again. After this, I think that was before the hard work period. And then it happens again. They come and have a date, and she basically is all right, this time for real, I'm breaking up with Dylan. I want to be with you again. And she just full on mask off manipulates this dude. And she's like, you'll wait for me, right? And she starts
in a transparently awful way, right?
Yeah. Totally talking down to him. And he even realizes it. He even makes a comment this is...
but the pussy's insane.
Not paternalistic, but just...
No, she literally commits cock and ball torture underneath the table.
Oh, yeah. No, she yeah.
He's edged. Dan is edged. And then they go to the apartment. He's doing the typical cuck thing of, oh, wait, I'll wait outside while you break up. Spoiler alert for anyone who's like under 18 that listens to this, don't ever fucking do that. Take my word on that. You never want to be.
Oh my God,
within
you
20
fucking
miles
did that.
Of a chick.
You say you're Haji, but you're fucking Dan.
Yeah,
You're Dan,
No,
David. That's why Gabe said it was Dave.
You're a fake cell. You're a fucking fake cell. I knew it.
I'll do a really brief sidebar story. One time in high school, my friend, like, there's this girl, we knew each other, she had a boyfriend, and then her friend was like, oh, do you like her? Would you date her if she broke up with her boyfriend? I was like, oh yeah, I guess I would. And then she broke up with her boyfriend, and she was like, oh, so you're gonna go out with me now, basically. like it was a whole like thing these girls were setting up to, like, you know how they are, like trying to tee up the next guy.
Yeah.
Hypergamy.
And I was like, okay, I'll take you out or something. We went on one shitty date. And then she waited for me at my fucking car the next day at school. This dumb bitch. I pick her up in my car. I drive her home. It was completely fairly chaste. I drive this chick home. She lives in a shitty apartment with her dad. And we're just like talking. She's like, oh yeah, my dad beats me. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm playing Star Wars.
Yeah.
The old Star Wars game on her like computer or no.
Battlefront 2.
The one. No, what's the one with you with duel people? I was playing that one on her like GameCube or something while I was waiting for her to change. She worked at Blockbuster.
Wait, you mean the fucking like the fucking fighting game?
The one? No, not that one. No, not
Academy?
that old. What's the one with? Yeah, it was like it's one before Academy that's like Academy.
I don't know, and the real answer is not important. But go on.
Yeah. But this chick, she was like a redhead. She had kind of like big boobs. She was a little soft, but she was cute enough. And then all of a sudden I hear like on the front door of her shitty apartment. And I was like, what's that? And she's like, oh gosh, my ex-boyfriend. She's like, I told him I broke up for, I hope she said for you, but she's like, it didn't end well. And she's like, he hit me too. I was like, what the fuck? And this dude's like banging on the door. And she's like, let's move to the back. Because we're on the ground floor of a shitty apartment, with like thin doors, thin walls, and a glass patio door. And so then she closes the blinds on the back door. Then the guy starts banging on the glass. We go and hide in the bedroom. And like, we're sitting there together. I'm snuggled up with this girl. And like, I get an erection. So imagine me and this girl on a dumpy couch in her smelly single dad's apartment who beats her. And I get an erection. And do you know what she says?
What?
Oh, what's that? And she reaches for my dick. And then in a moment of like supreme God-given clarity, I say nothing at all, and I punch myself in the dick. I don't know why I did this. And she like just like, oh, okay. And then it like is really awkward. And then we wait till the guy goes away. Then we go to my car, and then he like comes running at the car as we leave, and he's like banging on the door. Like it was a total fucking scene. And I'm like 17 years old or whatever. Like I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing in this.
Fuck off. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I never fucked her. I never like kissed her. She just reached for my dick one time, and like I put her off. It was absolutely brutal. And so anyway, all that to say, I have my priors on this, and so this triggered something.
Are you sure you didn't write this book? Because I'm getting like very like Dr. Dave and Mr. Dan vibes from this.
I've never seen you and Mark Marlow in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, and we know a lot of the same places, so
I don't know. Well,
that was a way too
it's an
long
awful overlap of cock and ball torture.
Good job not contracting hepatitis from that hoe.
You stayed stone cold.
She got pregnant like a year later
congratulations.
too. Yeah, that was bullet dodged.
So,
anyway. Jackalopians. I'll probably
no. Keep it. You gotta keep it. It's a gem story. It's a gem story.
Oh my god, it's gem. Yeah.
Okay, it's 100% true. Cock and ball torture. What else happened? Okay, so they walk over to the apartment. Yeah, classic cuck situation, bros. Don't do that. And then he sees I think it's like just as she walks away, he sees like the
sees
hollow-eyed figure of Scott. Yeah, like huddled up, terrified, like pale looking. And he's like, dude, what happened? He's like, Scott, it's me. Scott. And it takes him like 3 times till he hears him.
And then he shouts, "Hail the jackalope!"
And Scott gets more terrified.
And Scott freaks out and looks over and sees him. And he's like, Dan? And he's like, don't ever say that. Don't ever say that in public again.
They've surrendered the jackalope.
Yeah, and so they, he takes him up into his own apartment and starts relating to him the second group of stories.
Dude, it was like in that Rick and Morty thing where the guy gets eaten by a butthole. Like, this was me. I was clawing and screaming. I was like, don't pull me back in. Don't pull me back into this format, this dialogue.
Well, to be fair, you need a very high IQ to understand the Jackalopians.
Yeah. Yeah, I was still like wondering about breakfast, and here we are on this one. And this one is actually better, I will say, overall. Because it's more focused.
Real quick. I want to make it very abundantly clear, just as a reminder, that the last time that Dan has ever interacted with Hodge is in the fucking urinals at the pub. That is the last time.
At the bar,
yes.
Right.
That is the last time. It is also equally penis related.
Yeah, they've had like two earnest conversations, and then they work together like in a bland corporate setting before that. Gabe, do you want to do this? I feel like you haven't had a chance to like recount much.
I would love to recount this. All right, so they walk to his apartment. Dan looks through the wall, and you know what? He finds the Jackalopian flag, but it has a bunch of holes in it. He walks up to it a little closer. He's like, what the fuck? He's like, wait a minute. These are fucking bullet holes. What the fuck happened? So Scott makes a pot of coffee. He's like, listen, this is a long story. He's like, well, he goes to his watch because he's waiting to get cucked, right? So he's like, well, you know what? I got a few hours to kill. So Scott starts regaling him about the rest of the story, which is about the main... Yet again, this is Nick Carraway talking about Gatsby. So Scott talks about how the bullet holes happen. Basically, if I remember how it happened accurately, is that... So they start meeting up regularly in the Jackalopians. One day, Scott, in his apartment, he finds the Baron at his door. And the Baron is begging him, Baron and Hodge, and they're both begging for the Baron to stay at his place. And Scott's confused. I'm like, no, what do you mean? Like, what the fuck happened? And it's revealed that the Baron was trying to pick up some girls in, I think, Alexandria? Yeah, it is Alexandria. Which is like a very like bougie lib area, apparently. And he tries to...
Is that accurate, Dave?
It is. His description of it is 100%. It is the more settled, slightly wider, more little bit. It's like a pinch more suburban, a lot of red brick, like established.
The houses sound beautiful, actually.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous area.
But General Lee is from Alexandria.
Don't you know? Oh, that was great with the new. But anyway, So Baron does a cigarette trick. I think some cars like distract him or something. But so his cigar trick, he ends up dropping his cigarette onto a yard sign, which is your typical, in this house we believe, etc., etc. It's a lib sign, and of course he starts burning it, and he starts taking off his shirt and everything. He tries to fan it off, but the fire just keep on getting...
He's freaking out, and he tries to put it out.
Mm-hmm. And it belongs to, of course, a proud, independent woman of color. I think, what was her name? Was it like Taniqua or some shit? It was a great name. It was a great name.
Yeah, it was like Taniqua, like Johnson Obakwe or something.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, she was a hypanator.
It was
hyphenator with her white husband.
Yeah, it was peak Obama years, like Netflix couple.
Well, except it happened in it was 2021, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. Well,
yeah.
It was a homage to that couple era, right?
Right.
So he starts burning the sign by accident. Now, I don't know if y'all know this, but you know who else burns black people's yards? The KKK.
No.
So the Mexicans did not stop at taking our damn finance jobs or our damn industrial jobs. They're also taking our white supremacy jobs too. Damn it! Even in the Klan,
There's no job is safe from immigrants.
The response to this bit was hilarious.
Oh, it
too.
was great.
Like I mentioned earlier, the CNN covers the speech. Her "my black body" dialogue.
my black body is tired. That was good. That was actually really good.
Yeah, not only are they touching my hair, now they're touching my soul. They're burning my yard.
Now, mind you, what is his real name? It's like Francisco Ramon Iturgue or whatever, right? He has blue eyes. He has those A10s, but he's obviously like Hispanic. He's brown. He is brown, right? So there's this blurry ass picture of him all over the internet and also all over the news. No one recognizes him, right? But it's clearly, his name. I don't think it's Alan Jackson. I do not think he's a descendant of Mr. Stonewall, sadly, right?
Right.
So he goes to the Hodge, and he's like, Hodge, I need help. And so, of course, Hodge, he actually takes the oath of brotherhood of helping a jackalope seriously. So they go to Scott. They regale him with this situation, and Scott's like, okay. There's a big weird moment where Scott's like, I know, in the year of our 2020, we should apologize and offer to buy a new sign. And of course, this idea is retarded because that never ever has worked. Mm-hmm. And the actual crazy idea works a lot better, where of course him being a Colombian, basically a cartel lord prince, has an uncle Emilio, who is a pseudo cartel man / foreign Cold War or ancient Cold War warrior, literally Cold War warrior.
Oh, he was literally a FARC commando. Yeah. Like he was an anti-communist. He was a reactionary. He was a reactionary fighter in Colombia.
Yeah, he was a reactionary guerrilla, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, Uncle Emilio, I need you to take your yacht and take it to the coast of North Carolina and pick me up and take me back to Colombia. Take me back to the plantations. And of course, his uncle is like, hey, he's basically played by Danny Trejo. He's like, I guarantee you he was thinking of Danny Trejo in his mind, right? He's like, si, senor, or si, whatever how you say son in Spanish. So that's the plan. So it's going to take him a week to get all the way to North Carolina. So he's like, okay, we can wait 1 week. And so the Baron and Hodge all sleep in Scott's place. But to maintain appearances, they still have the Jackalopian meetups. So they all go meet up at the pub or a tavern or a bar. And guess who's back from his trip of his actual Hodge? Sneedman. And not only is he back to become rightful dictator of the canonical catechisms of Jackalopians and set it straight, he's also there to threaten Hodge's position of Jackalope Pope. Because he comes up with his usual charts. He loves his charts. But instead of his usual charts trying to debunk the heresy of the flying jackalope, he comes up with a screenshot of the Baron. He's like, does this look familiar? And of course, everyone's gasped.
So yes, because no one has identified the Baron yet,
right?
As the Alexandria Klansman.
Yeah.
So, but Sneedman is like, this is obviously the Baron, and I'm not going to turn him in unless
his request,
you don't vote for my motion. And there's also important to note at this point there is a $3 million reward for information leading to the capture of the
it's peak Covington Kid. It's like hyper woke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yes, there's a bounty for his arrest. Literally, it is a bounty for his arrest. Mind you, there's not even any legal charges yet. Not really, because they don't know who the fucker is. He hasn't even been questioned yet. This is all just media hysteria at this point. And all are based in sincere, sensitive young man Sneedman. All he asks is for a vote for him to declare the flying jackalope as heresy and to make him like Jackalope Pope.
Yeah, it's the least they could do, honestly.
Yes!
He's the clear-minded one.
And to and to kick out Haji.
Oh yeah. Depose him as Jackalope Pope. Right. So and Haji's like, yeah, okay. And then Dave is like, no. Scott's like also like, no. What do you mean? No, sorry. Dan's not even here. This is all Scott. Sorry. Sorry. The COVID cuck is still trying to dry off after getting the Hancock torture. So Scott's like, dude, there's no way. We gotta fight back. We gotta get the Jackalopians back. And Hodge just looks to Scott and says, I just won't tell him we're just having another bar, dude. Like, I just don't invite him anymore. He's like, it's actually not a big deal. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, we'll just reschedule for Tuesday.
Yeah, it actually doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter. You can, because everyone thinks he's a dick. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah, we could just make a new Jackalopes too. Right, that was actually a good line too. Yeah, he's very good at humor, actually.
Yeah.
And the banter between the brothers is great. So they start hanging out again obviously Emma, the waitress who wants to be impregnated, be turned trad wife by the Baron, follows them out of the pub. He's like, oh, is Jose, that's his name. Is Jose okay? Like, and then they basically agree to let her see him, quote unquote. And of course, she gets banged by the Baron, and they hang out at the St. Agatha's church.
Imagine the smell in that apartment. Just saying.
Oh my God!
Not a big space in those Clarendon apartments.
Like musky frijoles, right? So they hang out in St. Agatha's, and some residual Catholicism is coming back to him. Yeah, again, his spirit is activated by action. Like Haji or James's spirit, he is actually an Ubermensch. He is a Nietzschean figure. It is through action, it's through the demonstration of his will that his spirit is activated, right? Because it is actually when he's actually in the presence of St. Agatha's church, by doing this deed, by actions of chivalry. This is kind of chivalry, helping his brother out, and staying true to his fraternal order. Even though the fraternal order is technically heresy, he still has this residual thing come back up to him. And he starts thinking about Satan and like how we're surrounded by lies and everything. He has this kind of very emotive moment of thinking about the devil and how evil is actually real. This is not just a coincidence. This is actually genuine, real evil we're dealing with, and we're actually doing something good and noble for once. And it's actually a very sincere moment. But in the corner of his eye, or the corner of Scott's eye, a certain figure is watching them. And so the next day, the Baron asks for all of his stuff. Hey, Scott, can you go run over back to my place? This beautiful mansion. Can you go back to my place? I need all my jewelry. It's kept underneath my bed. I need my guns. I need my family's saber.
Well, not my guns, more like
Dueling.
my family's ancestral dueling pistols.
Yeah, the dueling derringers,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
The dueling derringers, my sabers,
awesome.
My 3 sombreros, all my plantation outfits, and also I have a bar of gold underneath the bed. Can you also get that for me too? And Scott agrees. So he goes to Baron's place, very beautiful mansion. Of course, it's dirty as fuck because he's used to having servants. So he gets his laptop. He gets everything, actually. And then he has the big brain idea of taking a nap on his couch.
Take a little snoozeroo.
He's like, no, because he doesn't want to. He wants to avoid the cuck thing because he can't
And
the
sleep.
Baron, they were fucking all night too.
Yeah, he can't sleep because the Baron and Emma keep fucking.
He gets couch cucked. Yeah, exactly. So he's like, you know what? I'm just going to take a nap a little bit. And of course, he wakes up to getting a fucking raid. Because it turns out someone, supposedly Sneedman, actually ratted the Baron out. But he leaves through the back. However, 2, as the good Grunhauer say, communist ninjas, Antifa, spot him actually leaving the Baron's place, because it's been publicly revealed. So also these independent Antifa militias have also gotten the word about the Baron being the Mexico's greatest Klansman. Colombia's greatest Klansman.
Yep.
Taking powder heads to a whole new meaning, right? So it is the previous Antifa guy from Dan's The Wolf. Yes.
Yeah, who beat up Dan at the BLM.
And
protest.
there's a slight
That's
chronological error because I think Scott also calls him the Wolf. Wait, which
it's not a
He
chronological.
says he was wolf-like. He doesn't say
they both
he was
describe
the
him
wolf.
as they both describe him as wolf-like, but neither of them, like, no one calls him the wolf.
Right, and he's basically satanic, quite literally. It's very Dante-esque, because previously during the riots, the wolf, literally while the Trump regime was playing Ave Maria, literally to Mary, like he literally put a horn to his ass and literally farted it out, and like because it's so blasphemous,
Right?
And Dan literally compares it to hell. Like, why would you call to Mother Mary in a situation like this? Because the riots are literally hellish to him. And so you have the wolf, the fart guy, and you also have his partner of the Antifa anti-Nazi community defense force, or they have some acronym. And his partner is a literal furry in a complete fursuit.
Yeah.
Does it say what animal the
It's
fursuit is?
It's a cat.
Yeah.
It's a cat.
It's a
Okay.
giant pink cat.
Mm-hmm. With a
Uh,
giant bite mark.
Comrade, Comrade Dream. What is
Dream
it?
Meow Meow?
Whisper, Dreamweaver, something like
I think
that.
it's Dream Meow.
No, Meow's the last name.
Yeah, it's Dream something. And so they kidnap him. They
Yeah.
kidnap these guys kidnap Scott with the bag.
Well, there's more like they corner him in an alley, right? And then they
They beat
just start,
the shit
they
out
just
of
start
him.
whipping him. Yeah, like they start beating him, and they start whipping him with a chain lock on a lock on a chain. Yeah, just like
And
he almost gets the ball treatment.
he literally almost does, but he managed.
Dreamheart, Comrade Dreamheart Meow.
Oh yeah, it's fitting. And again, some of the parody stuff is actually done quite well. He just needed a little bit more restraint, but the first Sono was a nice touch.
The gangs of Mark Marlow's gangs of goofballs are the best parts.
Yeah, dude.
You know, Wild Pete, Bo Slatterly, and the
Antifa safety squad,
the community safety squad.
Yes, dude. Imagine a bunch of furries versus a bunch of like based boomers. That would have been perfect, but sadly, it didn't go that way. So he ends up, because they're so stupid. He literally tricks them with my Ligma. They're over at Ligma. Ligma where? Ligma balls. That's how he uses a trick to actually run away with the bag and everything, because they're so incompetent.
And they're like, that's homophobic.
Now, of course, I've licked many balls in my time of a variety of genders.
Yes.
Oh, it was great. And there's actually a reference. There is a BAP reference. He's like, he passes by many wine bars where many tasteful banter is made. So there's a nice little Bronze Age pervert Easter egg. And he finally comes back to the group. And he's all bloody. They actually did beat him to shit, actually. And, so Emma helps him up, fixes him up a little bit. The Baron owes him many debts. He's like, oh, you actually brought everything, including the gold bar. And Scott makes a joke. He's like, shit, he actually does have a gold bar underneath his bed. Like, it's not revealed. I thought the joke would be he's actually a LARPer. But no, he's actually is basically like a cartel prince, basically.
Yep.
So the time is up. They put a M90 gas mask, like literally stalker mask from like the Stalker games, and
on the Baron,
and
to hide his identity.
And it makes sense because especially in a lib area like that, that's actually quite normal for the thing. He's like, they even say he has like the Omega Delta variant, and everyone just doesn't blink an eye after that. And before they go to the coast, one last time, James makes the Baron kiss the head of the jackalope, and Scott's like, "Oh, really?" Because like in front of the girl, and of course James keeps stone cold. He's like, "Motherfucker, you know it is the code, damn it!" And of course, the Baron obliges because he is a man of honor. He's basically Puss in Boots, and he says,
"This is also Emma's moment too."
Emma's moment
of not being a whore anymore.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Actually, it may have been like right before
it's
this.
It's slightly later.
Was it later? Yeah. Where they say like you don't have to come with us, because right now they're like walking to the car.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was like in the apartment where they're like, "Look, Emma, you don't have to be involved in this anymore."
That's actually a good point, because technically speaking, their vows are intertwined to the jackalope. Her as a vow as a woman, intertwined a jackalope scene, right? Because right before he kisses the jackalope, she says, "I don't care. Well, and I'm gonna move to Columbia with you." And of course, James is like, "What do you mean?" Oh, no, yeah, James and I think Scott is like, "But dude, don't you have like taxes? Don't you have like student debt?" And she's like, "I don't fucking care. What are you gonna do? Tax my makeup? Fuck you! I'm gonna bring my makeup." The dialogue's perfect. He's like, "I have nothing to lose. I have my bitch roommate and her ugly ass boyfriend who watches nothing but BoJack Horseman all day."
BoJack Horseman.
And they know I hate
Great
that
callback.
show. Oh god, it was hilarious. And of course, him and her, the Baron, while all of this is happening to poor Scott, they're watching Real Housewives and like Teresa flipping a table. Oh god, it was. Again, the character work is actually really great. The characters are great. I want more of the characters. But the Baron, he very righteously, nobly, while the mask is on, kisses the jackalope head, which he calls a rabbit. He continuously mistakes it as a rabbit.
My fellows in the rabbit cult.
He has never paid attention to the actual community. He just is in the corner making out with the waitress the entire time. But finally, they make it their way to the North Carolina coast. But the Antifa squad, the communist ninjas, are literally on their tails, shooting at them. They literally have a fucking gun. And they're literally shooting at them as they're trying to get to the coast. And there's this wacky... This is where it kind of falters a little bit. It's funny, but it's kind of cringe at the same time. So Emma's in the back of the car. She's throwing makeup. She throws her bra, and it gets stuck on the windshield wipers.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, just throwing everything out the window at them.
Yeah,
and ultimately she throws all of her makeup,
the makeup box
and stuff, and it paints the windshield essentially.
Yeah.
And
they finally crash.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Comrade Dreamheart Meow is shooting at them
wildly,
out of
somehow
missing. Yeah, hitting the car but never striking home. Yeah, they're terrible shots. Terrible shots.
There is actually a POV error, I think, here too, where it references specific actions happening in the Antifa car and like things they're saying, which like, I couldn't imagine Scott could hear.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, we're just like full third omniscient now. Okay, whatever. Let's keep cruising.
I like to think that Scott is actually an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Scott's just taking excessive liberties.
Dude, I love if the Jackalopes 2 ever happens and like he meets up with James again and like 90% of this is just bullshit.
No, Scott was just fucking with you.
That would literally redeem this book in a lot of ways. But so this is the biggest it's so fun, it's corny a little bit, some of the dialogue is cringe with Emma, but overall it's good. But then we have the preaching scene with James. So James has a full-on soliloquy monologue about Satan being real. And literally about, like, dude, you know, this environment, this politics, you know, they're literally trying to kill us. They believe in moral relativism, but only for us. In reality, it goes deeper. They're literally fighting for lies. In reality, they're the ones fighting for hate. And like Lucifer, they're lying to us. And like he basically says demons are real. And he says it completely sincerely. And it's a little long monologue, actually. And you forget that he just got out of a car chase. This is still a car chase happening, by the way. And it's so out of place. Because and the problem is he doesn't do dialogue tags or like prose tags very well. So it's nothing but dialogue. He's scared of description. Because a lot of the characters blend in with your head. He doesn't describe what they look like a lot or what they do a lot. Not really. Like, it should be frantic. Like, he should go on an Alex Jones-esque rant. Like, get like the pure adrenaline. He's like, motherfuckers, that Satan killed my brother. Satan is real, man. Like, it should be actually intense. You can still have him give the sermon.
Whereas it's actually very, it's very cogent.
Yes, it should be frantic. It should be lively.
Yeah. Well, and Scott, I just realized James, Scott, and Dan are like literally the same guy. That's also part of the problem. They have the same voice. They have the same religion. They have the same background. Like they're all the same dude. And so, and they're all telling the story of each other, which also adds distance.
Yeah.
To
so, James is the most noble. He's a Giga Chat. He's actually a very like awesome dude. He's the most developed. Scott is just a bro, and Dan is just a poor NPC trying to get to the dialogue boxes.
Dan is a set of ears. So,
but they're all But I guess my point is being that they all have the same political beliefs. I guess they don't all take action to the same extent. They have the same experiences, but they have the same like political beliefs, socioeconomic background, ethnicity, religious background, age. Like they're literally like
Yeah.
And like if I put their dialogue side by side, I don't think you could tell them apart unless it was like maybe one's. I guess like Dan's a little wimpier.
Well, isn't it? You'd have a pretty strong bet of it being Scott's dialogue since he says
so much
80% of the words.
True.
And also, James is more of a risk taker. He's very strong in his convictions. Scott is more weary, a little more logic cell, and Dan, he doesn't have he's a coomer. That's it. He's a normie conservative. He browses poll from time to time, but doesn't know really any of the slang. Or he doesn't speak my language. He's not a stone cold incel. He touches way too much grass. He has sex. He's not chronically online.
He has sex.
How dare
Immediate
he?
mark against him. Yeah.
Listen, he is not a true cell, and he doesn't speak online. But with James and Scott, they actually do have personalities. Well, Dan's whole arc is, I'm right wing and I'm horny. That's Dan's entire arc.
Yeah.
And I love long dinner conversations.
Yes.
I'm an excellent listener. That is really the.
That's my OkCupid profile.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kate. I didn't mean to sidetrack us. I know we're on to our last two big plot points.
Well, it is a sidebar. You know, we love our side tangents. We love our side tangents, folks.
Amen.
But so they finally make it to the beach, and Uncle Emilio's there. And after he gives his sermon, they make it to the beach, and they hug. And he's total badass, old, gruff. Yet again, Danny Trejo, basically. And he shakes his hands, and he's like, how honored they are to meet him. And he's like, he just says one word, remember God when you face death, or something super badass. And they hug the Baron, they hug Emma, and they go off in the little dinghy to the boat. And for the last time, I forgot. James literally brought the Jackalopian flag with him, so he at least starts waving it. And like the last words they ever say to the Baron is literally, he says, all hail the Holy Rabbit. That's the last thing they hear from the Baron's mouth before he gets to the boat.
Yep.
And of course, James, Dodgy, and Scott basically high five each other. It's like, oh my God, we did it! This is awesome. We technically broke the law, but who cares? We did it. And like they're basically celebrating. And of course, behind him is like, hello, fascies. And of course, it's the wolf and Mr. Furry, armed with a gun and a knife. And actually, there's more. They have a whole crew of them, I think.
There were more.
It's like 5 dudes.
There was the gray man who was like the dude who just looked like a normie, like the one who didn't look like a total fucking freak. It was basically there to tail them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah. Oh, fuck. I forgot. Sorry. I forgot the major plot point. It turns out Sneedman, my based stone cold theory cell, did not turn Baron in. It is revealed, like a couple pages back, it is Carnahan. The frat boy. The frat bro was the one who turned it in, because it is revealed in a flashback that they're playing a party game, and it's like, who would you cheat on? And he's a pervert. He's like, I'd cheat on the girl with the big tits. That would. It was
who would he cheat on for $3 million?
Yeah.
And he said, I would cheat on anyone for $3 million.
Yeah. No, the dog walker next door. She's like, really, that bitch? It was great.
Oh right, yeah.
Oh, it was great. So it turns out that Carnahan, the frat boy, was the one who did our boy Baron in.
Yeah, that hoe ain't loyal.
He's literally the Judas figure, basically. So sadly, one of the most funniest figures, because his dialogue is actually very funny, and it turns out to be the Judas figure. So, based on this intel, the Antifa people come to the beach and basically try to kill him. And they literally hide in the sand dunes. And Scott's like, "Oh my God, we can escape. We can go to the water. We can probably swim." And James is like, "You know what? No. I'm tired of running all my life." He has a little coming to Jesus moment, literally. And he's like, you know what? No, I'm going to stand up. He takes the flag, and he stands before the one with the gun. I think it's Wolf, the one who's the one with the gun.
Yeah.
And he starts reciting prayers. And I think in Latin. No, it's either English or Latin. I can't remember.
He's reciting the litany.
Yes. And of course, there's a beautiful, yet again, all the best prose descriptions. Yet again, he's not very much a prose stylist or very flowery. One of the best prose descriptions is the star right behind him. There's this beautiful blazing star in the moon right behind him of his silhouette as he's reciting the litany. And Scott looks at him and he's like, he is like almost a reincarnation of St. James, the man who was born from lightning, as Jesus said. And he reminds him of all the ancestors who fought the Ottoman Turks, who fought in the Crusades, the pagans, the Cathars, and the Muslims in Spain. It's like it's blood memories. He literally has a blood memories. It's like a Hyperborean edit come to life, basically. And
right.
So Scott does a Solid Snake behind the wolf character he gets a broken bottle from the beach and starts beating the shit out of the furry with a broken bottle, basically. And while that's happening, the wolf starts literally unloading the rifle. I forgot what kind of gun. I don't think he even says what kind of gun it is. Starts unloading on James, but misses every single round. It only hits the flag. And finally, when he gets like 10 feet away, no way he can miss, the gun jams. And James beats the shit out of the wolf, basically. I think he literally knocks out his teeth.
Yes. Yes.
He literally.
Also, there is a small error here, where a magazine is referred to as a clip.
I caught that too.
It's just every time, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Mark, you're joining the leagues of Dan Baltic of people that fucked up gun terminology.
Yep, I'll call it out every time I see it. You gotta do better than the lefties.
You gotta browse at least one K thread. At least one K thread before writing 4chan level.
Yes.
That's a good catch. So he literally defangs the wolf. He has become really re-internalized with his Catholic faith at this point. Yet again, outdoors. Yet again, the subtle pagan tension within Catholicism rises up again. Again, this time he is re-in-tuned with Mother Mary, because Mary represents the moon in this particular scenario. And that's where the story ends. Scott literally ends the story there. And he's like, yep, that's how it ends. It's 4 a.m. in the morning now in his apartment. And he's like, yep. And he gets a piece of mail, and he says, you're invited to my wedding. And it's wedding pictures of the Baron. And
in Colombia.
On the plantation with Emma. And she's a trad calf now, and she has a little baby bump. And he's like, yep, they're happily married now. And you know what? James wants to get the gang back together. Obviously not Fed related, but just the good guys. And of course he removes all the idolatry stuff, obviously, because he's a proper trad calf again now. But the Jackalope is still a nice figure. One of the guys wrote an essay about the white whale, Moby Dick, representing the holy jackalope. And he's like, yeah, we should hang out again sometime. And Dan is like, cool. And then he kind of walks away.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. And then they don't even have a very heart-to-heart. It's so awkward. It's so awkward.
That was a great 8-hour conversation, man. See you later.
That's great. Yeah, dude, it's.
Thanks for telling me about all those crimes you did.
Yeah.
Because we've had one dinner conversation, and also that hung out in the bar that one time.
Yes, they don't really hang out. Again, he should. It's like Fight Club, which is another kind of pseudo good example. You got to build up the brotherhood, the Mannerbund. There's only one scene where they all hang out together, really. Because Dan wasn't even in the second one, by the way. He's told about the second meetup, basically.
Right? Yeah, he did not make it to that other meeting.
Yes, he was too busy trying to chase pussy. It's a totally separate story. I think, I need to ask y'all, am I forgetting something? Or after he shows him the picture of the wedding and he says, oh, the Antifa guys got arrested, actually. Thank God North Carolina still has a justice system. Do Scott and Dan have any other conversation after that? After the whole conversation, do they have any heart-to-heart? Or I think Dan just walks away.
I think so. It's one chapter.
I'm pretty sure it was like, oh yeah, I'll see you at the next meeting. That sounds fun. Yeah.
After all of this, that's all he says. He has not changed his clothes. He is not taking a shower. He just says, yeah, man, I think I'd like that. He leaves the apartment. He goes to St. Agatha's. And I think it's early. It's 4 a.m. So they have an early mass. He hears people singing. And this is one of the only times where Latin is used a few times. but this is the only time where it's translated. So he hears a little bit about Mother Mary, and it's translated, and it's a part of the hymn that compares Mother Mary to a star. Yet again, calling back to that scene of the beach where James is silhouetted by this beautiful blazing star on the beach, where a miracle happens. It's obviously hinted that the gun jamming is a miracle. And he goes to see these statues of all the prayers and all these people. I think it is prayers or people praying for forgiveness. And at the centerpiece is Mother Mary. And this one's not an idol. It mirrors the idol of the jackalope because he describes the lights, the light bulbs, the stationed light bulbs in the exact same way, except the statue's beautiful. It's not dirty. The light bulbs are perfect. And he describes the shrubbery. It's very beautiful scenery. And it becomes a sincere moment. He reflects on his experiences of the one experience he has, which is the riot all the way in the beginning. And he reflects on everything that was told to him. And he's like, you know what? I think Catholicism is a good idea. And he basically converts back to being with Mother Mary. And he realizes that Mother Mary, despite the hell that's around us, he talks about the riot. He says, it's because that hell is around us that we need to come back to the faith. It is because that we're surrounded by lies and the devil that we should come back to the church. The church is protecting us. It is our only way out, basically. And it's a pretty good scene. It's actually a very touching scene. And then right behind him comes Katie the slut at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Katie looking fucking disheveled, like her hair's out of order, her clothes are like she clearly she must have fucked Dylan or gotten in a fucking bar fight.
Both. Fucking both. And dude, I lost my shit at this. Not in a good way. I'm like, oh, come the fuck on. This was actually a good scene. Because like she starts touching herself and starts talking in like a sing-song way.
And she's sweat dripping between her tits at like 4
and her
a.m.
moist womanhood, as he describes it. He's like, "Oh, Danny, come!"
It's a little too much too fast.
And he starts walking toward. It's like fucking an anime. It's like the mind hypnotized episode of every anime. He starts walking towards her. He's like, "Oh, Danny, yak."
And she's like, "Ada, ada."
Yeah. Literally. He's like, "Oh yeah, come to me, Danny. Come to me." And
in my head, it was like a gravitational pull of her tits as like Ave Maria plays in the background. Like, and he's like trying to pull back. Like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going back
she's
in.
obviously like a succubus, like archetypally a succubus.
Yeah.
But he's like, you know what? Be gone, thought. He's like, I am turning to Mother Mary. And he's walking away. I imagine this in slow motion. He's like, don't you do this. You can't do this to me. You love me. You belong to me. And he starts just ignoring her and walking back to the statue. It's oh god, it was so anime. And then she blends into the background. He starts walking. He walks past the Mother Mary statue, and the sun comes out of the clouds finally. And right before him is the shadow of the true symbol of oppression, the symbol of the cross, and the novel ends. And it's a good visual ending to have. But yet again, he does not know how to pace things at all. It's such a tonal whiplash between those two things sandwiched together. And it's a good moment. And this entire novel is like this, basically. It is objective. It is a coal mine. It is a very disorganized coal mine with a lot of sparkling gems. There's a bunch of gems in here. The bar scene's very good. The character dialogue is very good. James is a great character. The message is a very good character. Yes, I mean, I don't think was Marlow even conscious of the pagan and Catholicism angle, right? Because yet again, every scene where he's outdoors, the sun with Jesus, the Mary and the stars and the moon, that's where he feels the most Christ-like. That's where he feels the most with God and with the faith. And but he denies the idolatry, right? He takes away the idolatry, but the jackalope, the entire things of the jackalope brings him further closer to God. So there's this unconscious tension within the novel, within Marlow himself, I think, to a certain degree, of the pagan virtues. It's like Dante. It's like, all the pagan authors that I like, they're not in hell. they get like a nice little piece of purgatory. But everyone, I don't like.
Yep, they're in limbo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, he literally makes a headcanon, like, okay, for the Virgil, you're cool. You get a nice little piece of limbo, right? So there's an ancient tension between the Catholic virtues and the pagan virtues that are touched upon beautifully. Yet again, the only good pieces of prose is that outdoor scenes in both. And James is the most developed character. Well, here's the problem. The ending character arc is for a guy whose dialogue makes up less than 10% of the novel. James does not have an arc.
James does clearly like recover his faith, and he like rediscovers brotherhood, right? James loses and regains, right? But it's sort of him. It's him avoiding a problem rather than I guess changing fundamentally to me. Scott doesn't have much of an arc.
He should be the one converting. He's the one who witnesses it.
Yeah,
Dan converts by third degree,
and that's why really I can't help thinking that Scott and Dan need to be combined into a single character with a more cogent arc. If that was done, it would solve the perspective issues, and it would clean up the novel so much. And I feel like that would have been caught by a strong edit pass.
Yes, it feels literally like a rough draft. Like, he was writing it, but then he wanted to incorporate real life events with COVID and everything, and so he kept on updating it. But he's updating a rough draft rather than redrafting the thing from the get go. So it feels like 1.5, 1.6. It never gets to Mark 2 in terms of drafting.
Yeah, or just a beta reader. Like, I think that's why we need people to read each other's stuff and help out. Because
there really does need to be like there needs to be a writing circle that's real, where people will actually read each other's shit. So
if you donate $5 more to the Sidebar Patreon, we will beta read your work.
You'll get the elite the Gabe grab bag feedback for our $10 membership.
Yes.
On the pagan side, I do think my interpretation of it was more of a Catholic, naturalistic view of religion versus like this doctrinal, theocratic from the top spirituality, which is like always a thing in Catholicism because there's like...
Well, it's an inherently monarchical...
Yeah, but then also like even in religious practices, Catholicism always has a lot of like, manifested what some people would call idols, even if they're not directly worshipped. But like, anyway, that's the way I viewed it. It's more like he's finding his religion outside of the strict bounds of the church. Those people are
Protestants and are to be ignored.
Heretics.
No prods about
well, Catholics believe in relics, but if I recall correctly, I don't think anything resembling animals is allowed in the Catholic Church.
That's not fucking true.
You can have animals in the church.
Well,
yeah.
They'll even like bless animals.
Well, yeah, but I mean, smearing your blood on a jackalope head and then making an oath to it.
Okay. No, yeah.
You can't believe it has power, but like you can believe it's like a symbol and like.
Right.
Anyway,
every statue of like Saint Francis has animals on it. Like it's part of the symbology of like the Saint Francis of Assisi.
Yes. Well, yeah. What I'm talking about is because the oaths, he makes true on the oaths upon the Jackalopian head, and we as the reader are supposed to be like, yeah, man, he's actually staying true to the oaths of the Jackalopian, right? It's always seen as virtuously good. It's always virtuous when he does it, but it is an odd antagonism because literally the flag is the colors of the Holy Church, right? But on top of it is the paganistic, the jackalope, and of course the whole blood thing and everything else like that. So there's a
the Jackalopians are like meme culture, right? Like, so it's people collecting around this. It's not quite exactly what is the true and the sacred, but it's like a slightly off-kilter, silly version of it that people, a modern person is like capable of connecting with. And then I guess Marlow's view that he's arguing for is like, it's almost like it's a stepping stone, and then you evolve to Holy Mother Church.
Yeah, and it's also the combination of, the jackalope is an inherently American symbol, and
it's ethnos.
He's an extremely American Catholic, so it's sort of this thing that exists only in a combination of dissimilar things, like a deer and a rabbit, or an American and a Catholic.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's a Protestant, Protestant nation.
Is the fusion of opposites, or pagan and Catholic.
Yeah, nation of contradictions.
Yeah. Oh, wait, and remember, in Celtic mythology, there's multiple metaphors where a reindeer is like an embodiment of Christ, because there's this one mission of a saint where he sees a holy cross between the horns of a deer, I think. There's a painting of it, at least.
I think you're thinking of the logo for what the fuck is it called?
You know what I'm talking about, right? Because of course there's an old painting about that.
I have no idea.
You're thinking of the logo for Jägermeister.
Awesome. Jaeger bombs.
Listen, my monk brewster heritage is coming up. My blood memories of being a monk brewer has been coming out of me right now. But yeah, that's a good idea about the opposites.
Well, but it is the image according to the Wikipedia article for Jägermeister, the cross between the antlers of a stag is a reference to Saint Hubertus and Saint Eustace, both of whom converted to Christianity after experiencing a vision in which they saw a cross between the antlers of a stag.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Oh, so you know what?
Yeah. So also Jaeger bombs and college bros is. Jaeger bombs are obviously the only thing that a Catholic bro can slam, right?
Sorry, yeah.
Ugh, so
That's what we've learned. That's what we've learned. Fucking.
Sorry, Lutheran losers. Jaeger bombs are for Catholics only.
I miss Jaeger bombs. Yeah.
That was a fun fad. I remember, yeah, that and what was the other one? I don't know. Was obsessed with for like a summer. The cinnamon one, the Fireball.
Oh, Fireball. No, that's still that's still a big.
Yeah,
thing.
Fireballs are still a thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, disgusting.
That shit's fucking gross. Jägermeister's great.
Yeah, it's classy. But we're wandering. I guess one closing thought for me. I would second what you would just point out, Gabe. Yeah, it feels a little drafty to me in parts, and I think it just really needed. I guess I would hope that this writer and other people who put out stuff would consider putting out maybe more short stories and getting harsh feedback and writing circle participation and things like that, because I just feel like this one is really so much of it. There was great individual scenes, but just structurally it just really suffered, and it's just a shame because it felt like there's a lot of these parts I'd happily reread again, but the way it's laid out is very it's just a little clumsy.
Yeah, it's a checkpoint of gems in a sea full of coal.
Damn, okay, I wouldn't go that far.
Mark,
yeah.
I did like many parts of this book as well, but a lot of all the good parts of this book are from talent and real work, and all the bad parts of this book are pretty much from a need to edit. Mm-hmm. So that's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
You know, I will definitely read the next thing you put out.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, there's with some polish, this thing would have been a banger from end to end.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
Yeah, very
I would-
fixable.
And I totally get it, because there it is. There are no editors in this scene. I mean, obviously the there are people who do editorial work at the
At the pubs.
boutique publishers, but ultimately a lot of the time, you're not going to get the kind of harsh reading that is necessary for good editing. And and I mean, like, it's a real thing that needs to develop in the space, because we're in an agora here, so we're kind of having to reinvent some systems. So
First principles.
Yeah, I don't know where it's going to come from, but it is absolutely something that needs to be developed. As they say in Family Circus, not me, but somebody.
Well, it was the early Gold Rush period. There's a lot of innovation to be
weirdly
had.
wholesome reference.
Yeah, it's actually there's an Unreal, like, more racist meme I'm specifically referencing. It's like a sub reference for those old heads in the Tukey Guard.
Somehow,
all one of you named Miles McDonald.
The true Took cells.
The true tugs, the true tuggers.
Yes, the true Tookie Tuggers, the triple T's.
All right, last one. Any other last
I would
call-outs?
actually 100% agree with Cap. The bullet point it needs a tighter focus. Literally, you got your social commentary out. It should be something very character focused. He's very strong with dialogue, actually. Very strong with characters. At least in terms of personalities. He needs to kind of increase, like, visual descriptions and actually parsing them out. Cut off the fat, basically, and make them much more personality, where if you take a character's dialogue or POV, you can tell the difference right off the bat, instead of, like you said, where they blend together. So, tighter focus, something more small or intimate. Yet again, he was great in the club scenes, or the pub scenes. The ending of the story should have been the reunion, basically, and showing James change. So a tighter focus, something smaller in scope, tighter focus, and just practice your craft.
I think he could have done the same. I think he could have done the exact same scope. But
well, no, because
anyway, ultimately that level, I don't know that we can start being that prescriptive.
but
But
I think Gabe could tighten the scope of his feedback. You said
Nice.
tighten the scope like 5 times, Gabe.
But, you know what? Fair enough. But you know what? It's never too admonish to repeat a good point.
Gabe,
Amen.
When Dan walked away from a real flesh and blood woman who was completely DTF, and approached a statue, a beautiful statue.
Oh, fuck off.
How did that make you feel? Did you briefly feel that maybe this was literally you?
Listen, as a true cradle Catholic, I would never, ever think such thoughts in the presence of our Mother Mary. Statue or no statue, thank you very much. I only do it with the pagan bros. All right.
Okay.
Hellenic figures, fan
only
game.
Hellenic figures get the.
They get the peck. They get the bro peck.
Like a little.
And I truly, it's respecting. It's like kissing your grandpa, right? You kiss him on the cheek. Hey, grandpa, how you doing? It is.
Slip him a little tongue. It tastes like a peanut.
It tastes like vitality. Damn it! You taste the Homeric deeds of the past.
Okay, let's pull the plug before this even goes. Thank you, everyone that listened. Have a great
Good night.
Bye.
So when a woman says, "I want you to strangle me," during sex, there's some basic Bayesian priors you need to update. One, you have not been satisfying her recently, and two, you need to overshoot, not undershoot.